Hi guys and welcome back. This is the first video of Christmas Cards 2021 series and I hope you will like it. I have selected 3 different subjects and one of them is this pine cone because I created another video 3 years ago that you really liked and it had these 3 cones and I hope you'll enjoy just painting it slower and simplified. So I'm going to be starting with this 4.5 by 6-inch piece of paper. It's a cold pressed arches. You can use hot pressed as well. It's not that important. We're going to be using the supplies I have mentioned down below this video. It's a pretty common color scheme and you can start with 3 colors, the primaries, and develop all the colors that you can mix them and obtain these colors, or you can just get the tubes on the specific colors that I have used here. Now I'm going to be taping this down and we're going to wet the whole paper and work wet on wet. I'm using a 1-inch flat brush to go over the whole paper. It's a Princeton. You can see all the brushes I'm using in this video. They're all listed below. I don't insist on having a specific kind of brush. I kind of learned to work with all of them, but I do love this silver black velvet brush, and I think it's important to have a brush that has very pointy tip at this stage. You'll see that we're creating this blobs of color, and it's not important if they go around your sketch or flow. I think it's even better if that happens. You're going to have a very interesting effect and more liveliness of your painting. I do like to paint a lot of loose recently, and I think that shows in my work, and it just allows me to experiment more as well. I'm using here 3 main colors, and that's ultramarine blue that I'm mixing into the Hooker's green from Winsor & Newton. So it's a warm green, I would say. And I'm also adding lemon yellow. Lemon yellow has to be very diluted, not directly from the tube, because we don't want its intensity to interfere with that poppy green. I'm also adding more burnt sienna on the right side of the cone, suggesting the light coming from the left. So I can work on wet here. So you see those pine needles that I have at the top and at the bottom. I created those with that black velvet brush. It's very pointy, so it creates this interesting effect. So this is that brush, and now that everything has dried, I'm going to go around the cone and darken some areas, and this is called a negative painting, when you're using a dark value and creating shapes with that around your main shape. You can skip this step if you like to have a very flowy and fluffy feel of your painting. I have decided to make the whole cone in focus. So the way I like to work with loose and tight painting is to use both in the same piece. And I will do the background very loose, and the pieces that I want to show in focus, I'm going to work tight. Here, once everything is completely dry, I'm gonna define each and every flap. Let's just call them flaps. I'm using a dark combination of that burnt sienna with burnt umber and some sepia. The upper side of each stroke, it's gonna be very tight, very well defined, and for the bottom I'm gonna go around with the wet brush to rub it and dissipate it, because I want a soft edge at the bottom. If you feel confident here, you can use a bigger brush, but I highly recommend to have a synthetic brush. The tighter the painting, the more control you want to have, and stiff brushes offer you a little bit more control. This is a Princeton round 2 brush. Now you can go over and darken it even more. For the darkest layer, I'm using sepia. I'm gonna be adding more warmth to this painting comparing to the last cone I created 3 years ago. You'll see the difference and the progress. I'm not as afraid of color anymore. And, I actually enjoyed seeing more saturated colors recently. You want to get those pointy tips of the cone, and I'm gonna be determining the size and the shape of each flap, just going around it and adding some negative painting to the piece. Now it's almost ready. I don't think I want to work it too much. Just make it simple. You'll see that I'm gonna use the left side of this card to insert a greeting. I have that stamp from last year, and I think I'm gonna go with Merry Christmas. Yeah, I'll do that one. So now I'm gonna be using the same color because I want to keep the scheme color unitary. I'm adding it to the stamp. It has to be pretty thick in order to distribute evenly, and I'm not pressing too hard, barely touching it. Now, I don't want any splatters or stains on the paper, so I'm gonna try to go over it one more time with my brush. I'm using the same stiff round 2 brush from Princeton. Now let's move on to the polar bear. This one's gonna be very fun. I'm gonna create the horizon line a little bit slanted to not have too harsh symmetry. And I'm sketching the bear. You can pause it here if it works a little slower. You can make the head bigger. This is actually my second attempt. I created the same card previously just to make sure the color scheme is right, and I've decided to change it. I'll show you at the end the first version, and also the bear has been sketched differently. It doesn't really matter as long as your bear is cute and it's not scary. That's good enough. Also here you can play with the tree. So he's holding a tree, like he's been stealing a tree from the forest and wants to put it in his little bear house. So I'm wetting the paper only in the sky area. You'll see as I bring the camera closer to the painting, you'll see how the water shines. So I'm watering everything from the horizon line up that goes around the bear. We want the hard edge there. Once this is all evenly distributed, I'm going to proceed putting the color in. I went with cerulean blue for this one, and I'm starting from the top, putting more paint on the top and a little bit less at the bottom. But it's pretty even. It's not going to a complete white gradient. This is the previous one. It's ultramarine blue on that one for the sky. I wanted a cooler sky because ultramarine is warmer than cerulean, so I figured I want to show that it's really cold in the North Pole there. I'm also working for the snow area. You can proceed working here right away. You don't have to wait for the sky to be completely dry. I'm using here a very, very diluted combination of blue. This one is on ultramarine blue combined with permanent rose, permanent carmine. This is called what I have here. And I'm adding some areas of that cerulean blue because I want to have a unitary composition. I want all the colors to work together and have some correlation. So you're going to see that I'm going to be dropping a few drops of that into the bear as well. So I'm starting with the head, and you can still you can see that reflection from the sky into the head. The bear rolls into dirt, and it's getting into rocks, and it'll get dirty. So it's a pretty big difference between the color of the bear and the color of the snow. So the bear is gonna be yellow, more yellow. So after I'm adding this blue, I'll drop in that burnt sienna, and I'm combining it with yellow ochre. Again, the bear is dirty, so it has to look muddy. We usually don't want to have muddy colors, and I've been an expert at creating muddy colors in the past. I'm not proud of that at all, but that's what happened, and I didn't understand why can I get these vivid colors, but now I do, and I am using the muddy colors only in specific circumstances. Now I'm gonna create the shadow using that cerulean blue and a combination of that purple I created for the snow. It's a little bit darker now. You can play with the shape of this shadow. You can make it bigger or thicker. My bear is super skinny. For the body, I want to emphasize that it's not important the shape because we're going to be covering it with tree anyways. You'll see that I'm adding some sepia to show the darkest areas of the bear. And I'm having a crisp edge towards the paw, and I'm making it softer as I go towards the head. And I'm also dropping a little bit on the neck, so it's a clear difference between the head and the neck. The head sticks out a little, so we will cast some shadow on the neck. I'm adding a little bit of that purple in here. Now proceeding to the tree, I'm using a combination of that green I have with some ultramarine blue. And for each branch, I'm going to vary the amount of water that I have in my mix. Further away branches are going to be more diluted. Closer branches are going to have more pigment. You can add more yellow here. You can make them look very fresh. The new branches are usually very yellow, light colors, and the darker, older branches are darker. So I'm moving towards the bottom, and I don't want any branches that are fresh from the middle down. So I'm going to be switching to this burnt sienna with sepia. It's kind of like the bear trying to eat or destroy the bottom part of the tree. And I'm adding these, let's call them ellipsis shaped cones. They're going to be substantially darker than everything that's around them. And I can dump them anywhere I want in the middle of the tree. And I'm adding a little bit more color there because I want to mask the body of the bear a little bit more. Our bear is almost done. I'm adding final touches of darker pigment. You can add more cones, and you can even add Christmas decorations in this tree. So I'm taking the tape off, and this is the final result. You can see it up close. I think it turned out pretty well. I think I like the previous one better, but I do like this one too. So yeah, the one from the right is the first option. We have these two for now, and For the next card, I'm gonna be moving on and doing this fox. This is a loose work, and this is the sketch I have created just to establish my colors. I think I'm happy with this scheme. We're gonna be keeping the same palette of color, so burnt sienna, raw umber. I'm gonna be using this Payne's gray. I have one from Van Gogh that I actually like very much, and ultramarine blue. I'm gonna be starting with this sketch from the upper third part of the paper, creating the nose and the ears. You can play this part of the video slower if you like, or you can pause it. But I'm using just a regular pencil. This is probably a 2B. I like to stick with the softer ones. This is a very easy card. You can paint this with your kids or with your granddaughters, grandsons. It's fun, and it will turn out a little bit different, but it's fun to create. I'm adding here some touches of the masking fluid because I want to show the snowflakes on the fur. Everything that's been masked will be the white of the paper, and I'm pre-wetting the whole paper, so I'm working wet on wet on the background starting. For this card, I would pay attention to not go past the lines I've created with the pencil. Maybe I went a little too closer as well, so you can keep your distance from those lines because the paint will move, it will work. You can see in the belly area how the gray of the background already seeped in to the shape I have created, but that's fine. I'm wetting now the fox and adding the burnt sienna. I've combined this part with yellow ochre, and again I have not used lemon yellow here because I don't want to have another pop of color. I want the start of this painting to be the burnt sienna. You can add some more red in it if you like. That will make it look nice. A cadmium yellow or a cadmium red would look nice. I'm also adding this sepia here to make it a little bit more brownish, and I'm adding more color as I get close to the grooves, like the fur will fold in, and that's where we'll see more darkness. For the paws, I'm using the Payne's gray mixed with the ultramarine blue, and I wanted to dissipate into the sienna fur, so I'm working pretty fast at this stage, and I'm dragging the edges so it creates this fur effect. Now I'm adding the same dark combination for the tips of the ears, the eyes, the mouth, and the nose. I can add a little bit darker color for the coat. I think it could use a little bit more contrast there. I would be happy to see your guys' paintings. If you're gonna post them on Instagram, just tag me there and how you decide to make them more interesting. So for the white fur in the front, I don't see that poppiness, and that's because there's not enough contrast. So I'm adding even more of that Payne's gray for the background. Now that it's completely dry, make sure I take the tape off without ripping it. And I also took that masking fluid off. You can see some of the snowflakes are very white. For the background, I didn't mention that, but I also added some salt that will create a nice effect. And I also added some gouache, so you can choose between them which one you like more. You guys mentioned on a previous video that gouache is not pronounced like this, it's gouache. I have looked it up, and the word gouache comes from French, and apparently in America we're supposed to pronounce it gouache, but in British English it's gouache, just so you guys know. Yeah, so I'm cutting the edges and that will make it look very crisp and nice. You can keep the edges if you want to frame them, but I think I'm gonna just glue them to white paper. So these are the two bears, the previous option that I created. Please let me know in the comments below which one did you like more, this ultramarine or the cerulean. And also let me know what kind of videos would you like to see, if you like this format, and what kind of subject you would like to see next. I'd be happy to paint for you. Happy painting, guys. Bye.